You're standing on a rain-soaked range, the air thick with the smell of wet turf and frustration. You've just sliced your fourth drive into the same patch of rough, and the guy next to you mutters something about needing a new head. You've heard it before. Maybe from a buddy, maybe from a pro who glanced at your swing for 30 seconds. The solution is always the same. Buy a new driver. But here's the quiet, uncomfortable truth that the industry doesn't want you to hear. The problem isn't your club, it's the little number stamped on the sole, a decal that's been lying to you since the day you bought it. Every golf guide you've ever read, every YouTube tip from a long drive champion screams the same mantra. Lower loft equals more distance. You've accepted that 9.5 degrees is the standard. If your ball is ballooning or dropping short, you assume the technology inside your head is obsolete. You start window shopping a $500 replacement. You tell yourself that the new carbon fiber crown or the adjustable weighting will fix that slice. You believe the marketing, and the marketing has convinced you that the solution is a completely new club. But in a 2023 test conducted by an independent gear lab, over 1,200 amateur golfers were put on a launch monitor with their own drivers. The result was a brutal contradiction of everything the industry pushes. The average optimal loft for maximum carry distance across every swing speed tested was 11.2 degrees, not 9.5, not even 10. That number is worth sitting with for a moment because it reveals how far your own spec might be from reality. If you've never had your current driver measured on a monitor, you're flying blind with a club that cost you hundreds. Subscribe if you want to keep uncovering these quiet contradictions that the retail floor will never admit. And in the comments, type the loft number you're currently playing, the one on the sticker, not the one you guess is right, so we can see just how many of us are victims of that decal. And here's the part that stings. 68% of those players had never had their current driver's loft confirmed on a monitor. They were playing a number they guessed at, a number chosen off a rack. That test signals a quiet epidemic. The average misfit, the gap between what a golfer's attack angle demands and what their driver delivers, costs 22 yards of carry. 22 yards. Let that number settle. That's a full club and a half on an approach shot. It's the difference between hitting a 7-iron into a green and a 5-iron into a bunker. And it's not caused by an old head. It's caused by a sticker that says 9 degrees when your swing needs 12. The way manufacturers design their headlines makes this worse. The 9-degree head is the hero, the one that sits in the front of the Pro Shop display. It signals power, tour-level spin, the kind of ball flight that makes you look like you know what you're doing. The 12-degree head sits on the bottom shelf, dusty, assumed to be for seniors or high handicappers. But the real engineering, the piece that makes the whole system leak money, is in the adjustable hosel. That tiny sleeve, which costs roughly $20 to produce, is the only part you actually need. Think about what happens when a golfer who slices buys a new driver. They walk in, get fitted for 10 minutes, and walk out with a head that still doesn't match their delivery. The fitter tweaks the sleeve 1 degree, maybe 2, but the head itself is still a lie. The player spends nearly $550 on a new club when a $40 loft sleeve swapped onto their existing head would have produced a better result. The industry doesn't sell you a fix, it sells you a new box. This is where the logic splits. You can keep feeding the machine, or you can step off the treadmill. Subscribing here means you're choosing to see the numbers behind the promises, not just the marketing posters. If this resonates with you, there's a lot more where this came from. Link in the description. And in the comments, write sleeve first if you're willing to try a $40 fix before your next big purchase. Here's the inversion that changes how you see every trip to the driving range. You do not need a new driver. You need a launch monitor session and a fitter who knows that your swing speed, especially if it's below 100 miles per hour, wants more static loft than you think. The myth is that lower loft launches lower and rolls more. The reality for most players is that higher loft straightens the shot and increases carry because the face is more open at impact relative to the path. If you've ever spent close to $600 on a new driver, walked to the first tee, and felt the same slice snake into the trees, you know that hollow feeling in your chest. It's a quiet disappointment that you try to rationalize. You tell yourself the shaft needs adjustment. You tell yourself the swing will come. But deep down, you know you just paid for hope that didn't deliver. That moment, that silent acceptance of being played by a sticker, is exactly what the system is built on. Now, here's the path out of it. 3 moves, no new driver required. First, take your current head to a fitter and put it on a TrackMan. Second, have them measure the actual loft at address, not the number on the sole. A head that says 9.5 can easily sit at 10.2 or even 11, depending on the wholesale setting and how you sole the club. Third, if the number you get is still lower than what your attack angle needs, spend $50 on a different loft sleeve. That's it. The technology in your driver, the face thickness, the moment of inertia, the center of gravity, hasn't changed enough in the last 5 years to justify an upgrade. What changes is the geometry. The loft, and that's the cheapest adjustment you can make. The industry will tell you your head is dead because the material is a year old. The data says the head is fine. The decal is the liar. Keep an eye on that lie through the rest of the round, because next time we're going to talk about the shaft you are currently choking down on. That single move, gripping down an inch, is costing you roughly 15 yards of distance. And a swap costing $150 will beat any $600 head on the market, assuming you match it to the swing you actually have, not the one you wish you had. Let that $150 number sit next to the $600 replacement you almost bought. It's a ratio that exposes the entire pricing structure. A sleeve plus a shaft swap costs about a third of a new driver, and the performance gain is larger because you are fixing the 2 variables that actually matter for your delivery: loft and flex profile. The head itself, the part that gets all the marketing hype, is often the least important variable in the equation. Consider what happens inside a typical fitting bay when a golfer with a slice brings in a 2-year-old driver. The fitter will almost always blame the head. He'll tell you the face is too closed, the spin is too high, the center of gravity is too far forward. But 9 times out of 10, he doesn't even check the actual loft before recommending a new club. He's relying on the same sticker you bought. He's guessing, just like you are. The data from that same 2023 test tells us something else that stings. When the fitters were forced to measure the actual loft at impact, nearly half of the drivers sold as 9 degrees were delivering more than 10 degrees of dynamic loft. That means the sticker was wrong from the factory. Manufacturing tolerances on adjustable drivers are wider than most players realize. A head that says 8.5 on the sole might be delivering 9.8 at the moment of truth. You paid for a number that never existed. This is where the system gets clever. Because once you know the sticker is unreliable, the industry's next move is to convince you that the only way to fix the problem is to buy a new head with a different sticker. They don't offer a service where they test your current head, measure the actual loft, and sell you a sleeve. That would cost you $40. They want you to spend $500. The entire retail experience is designed to funnel you toward the bigger purchase. The psychology behind this is straightforward. A golfer who spends $600 on a new driver feels a powerful need to believe it worked. They will adjust their swing, their grip, their stance to justify the expense. The driver that didn't fit them becomes the driver they adapt to. That adaptation costs yards, but it saves the ego. The industry counts on this. They know you'd rather change your swing than admit the sticker was a lie. The loop closes when you realize that the next time you step onto the range, you have a choice. You can keep chasing the next head, the next shaft, the next marketing promise. Or you can stop, pull out your current driver, and ask one honest question. Not what does the sticker say, but what does the monitor say? That simple shift from trusting a decal to trusting a measurement is the most profitable change you can make in the game. And you don't even need to open your wallet to start. The choice is not between a cheap fix and an expensive one. It is between paying for a measurement or paying for a myth. The measurement costs you an hour on a launch monitor and maybe $50 for a sleeve. The myth costs you $600, and the quiet resignation that comes from knowing you still hit the same slice. One path leaves you with the same swing and a better result. The other leaves you with a lighter wallet and the same frustration. The industry has built an entire retail ecosystem on the assumption that you will never ask to see the actual numbers. They have designed heads, written ad copy, and trained sales staff to steer you away from the one piece of information that makes their pricing look absurd. That information is the difference between what your driver says and what it does, and it is free to obtain if you know where to look. So the next time you stand on that rain-soaked range, smelling the wet turf and feeling the slice creep back into your swing, stop. Do not reach for your phone to search for a new driver. Reach for the adjustment tool in your bag. Turn the sleeve one click, see what happens. The fix you need is already in your hands. The only thing missing is the courage to trust a number you measure over a number you were sold. And that is the whole game, stripped down to its essentials. The driver in your bag is almost certainly capable of hitting the fairway more often than it does today. The difference between where that ball lands now and where it could land is not a new purchase. It is a new understanding of what you already own. The industry will never tell you this, because the truth is cheaper than the lie. But now you know. Now that you've seen how the numbers stack up, the real test is what you do with this information on your next range session. Subscribe so you don't miss the shaft breakdown coming next, the one that saves you another 15 yards you didn't know you left on the table. And in the comments, write measured if you're ready to trust a launch monitor over a decal, or tell us the loft you're actually playing once you check, and knowing, in this case, is worth more than any sticker could ever promise. The only question left is whether you will use it.